Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. And today's guest is Kate Bradley Chernis. Hi, Kate.
Hey, Adi. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm sweating. Sorry, everybody, but I mean it's like 90 and humid, and I'm trying to recover from vacation. I know that sounds terrible, but like 2 days of laundry and email mountain and all the things that go with coming back and trying to get back into it without losing that sense of sanity you just spent, so hard trying to regain reading a book or whatever it is we all do on vacation.
Absolutely. Yes. I know how it goes. So I came from vacation as well. So there you go. We're both recovering. But Kate,
Nice.
let me introduce you because our audience is probably going like, who is Kate? But Kate is amazing. So Kate is the founder and CEO of Lately AI. And AI stands for artificial intelligence, right? And we're going to talk all about marketing and artificial intelligence and how you can combine both and how can you utilize artificial intelligence in order to actually create great processes and systems for your marketing, which I'm really excited to talk about. But I have to tell the entire bio here because it's amazing. So Kate, you're a former rock and roll DJ. Amazing. And you had like 20 million listeners as you were the music director and on-air host at SiriusXM, right? So what channel were you the host of?
Oh, I was the music director for XM50, The Loft, which they retired it a few years ago, but it was one of the most popular channels.
Oh, wow. Great. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. And then you're also an award-winning radio producer, engineer, and voice talent with 25 years of national broadcast communication, brand building, sales and marketing expertise. And you brought all that information in order to create Lately AI.
Yeah, it's nice when your life connects itself, right, Adi?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's the trick, is making sure that the line sews everything up nice and neat for you.
For sure. So let's talk about you a little bit before we talk about marketing and AI. Let's talk about your journey and how did you become a founder and a business owner and the CEO of Lately from your being a music director all the way to where you are now?
Yeah, that is the question. So I had the best radio job in the world. Everybody wanted to be where we were. And I was miserable, Adi. I was being sexually harassed, and I didn't even know it at the time. I mean, this is a long time ago, and we didn't have all the language like we all do now. And it was rewarded. It was something even I participated in. You were just applauded for being one of the boys, let's say, okay, and the weird thing, though, was there was this kind of tension or hostility that came with it called a hostile workplace now, which I didn't know what that meant either. But people were jealous of me and what I did for my channel and the success that we were having and were using it against me, And so that was really frustrating because I couldn't understand. Like, I was kicking ass. Why wasn't I getting the accolades that I deserved for this? And my body started to react as your body does. Your body starts to tell you things when your brain won't listen, right? And so I had multiple injuries and ailments. It was starting to eventually scream at me saying, you have to change this lifestyle. It's not working for you. And I made a change. I went to another music industry related company, and it was another boys club. And the pain got worse and worse, and I was actually incapacitated. And my dad one day lovingly shook me by the shoulders and said, "You can't work for other people anymore." And there's no shame in that. That was the other thing he said. And there's no shame in that. And the light bulb went off because two things were clear. Number one, there was another way. And number two, the stress was caused by the shame I felt. I thought I was disappointing my male bosses, right? And I couldn't figure out how to please them. A lot of therapy for that. So I read a self-help book, which I thought was garbage, but I did it anyways because I was trying to just do anything in my power. I'd seen a million kinds of doctors, east, west, you name it. And the self-help book was The Secret. Remember that book?
Mm-hmm.
I call it a barf of a book because it's not very well written, but the idea is solid. And the idea is, the secret is that there is no secret. It's all in your mind. You know, what you believe is what you become. And what I believed at that time was I was sick. I was unhealable. There was no way out. I couldn't find the light. And it's all I talked about. You know, I smoked, which is like another way of saying I want to die all the time. You know, I was this toxic ball of energy and negative energy. And so my husband gave me a startup book because he heard my dad, and the book was Guy Kawasaki's Art of the Start, which is one a lot of people know. And one or two chapters in Guy.
His book, Zen Presentation Zen. I just mentioned.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, absolutely.
You know him, yeah. So, and he, you know, that book is not meant to be a handbook. It's meant to be inspiration, because that's a lot what we need when we're first starting out. It's scary, and so I took it quite literally. Right in the beginning, he says, "Don't make a plan, just get started." And so I figured, well, then obviously I don't need this book. And so I stopped reading it. And fortune was favoring me. And I had a meeting in person with two men who were huge fans of mine at XM. And they wanted to hand deliver me a product for the company I worked for instead of send it in the mail. And I went to lunch with them, and they turned out to be angel investors. And they gave me $50,000 to start my first company. So that was like a pretty big moment. It wasn't lately, but it was part of on the way here. And I think, you know, the takeaway there, and we can talk about the rest of the story if you want, but I don't want to go on too long, is that the doors that become open to you, luck sometimes brings you the door, but you have to have the wherewithal to go through.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And wherewithal, or maybe stupidity sometimes for me, or maybe courage, you could put it as. But I was lucky that these men were trustworthy and smart, and they turned out to be great friends, and they believed in me. They didn't know what we were going to build together, and it didn't matter to them. They believed that I was the person to build whatever it was, you know, and that felt remarkable. That was a huge confidence booster. And there was no sexual harassment. I mean, there was none of that stuff. They just believed in me.
Right.
So anyways, from there, we did something, and it was cool, and it was going well. And I won't bore you guys with those details, but along the way, someone else came to me and said, "Boy, you're marketing that really well. Would you like to consult us? We'll pay you more money, and you can exit the music industry altogether." And I said yes. And that was the Walmart project. So I ended up building, back to systems, I ended up building Walmart, this insane spreadsheet that got us 130% ROI year over year for 3 years.
That's amazing. That's a whole podcast only on that. Like, what was that spreadsheet?
Yeah, because I mean, we've all done that, right? I mean, I feel like so many great plans and systems have all been birthed in some spreadsheet that hurts people's eyeballs.
Mm-hmm.
Rows and rows and rows and rows and rows and rows. But the idea, though, Adi, was the Walmart project was not only Walmart. It was Walmart and all of their franchises. We had Bank of America and all of theirs, the IRS, AT&T, United Way Worldwide, and the National Disability Institute. So, I mean, IRS and disability, like, how do you market these typically unsexy things? Let's be honest, acronym city, okay, right? And there was for-profit, nonprofit, and government. So it was a very strange mix of people wanting to work together. There was a good cause at the heart of this project. It was all about finances and taxes, so again, not really sexy. But what I couldn't understand was, how could they possibly be measuring themselves when no one had any history or organization to reference and understand? So I started to pull together the pieces and just index them. Let's make a library. What are we doing? What are we writing? When are we on the air? What channel is it? What state is that in? Who's listening? Who paid for the ad? What newspaper is it going into? What zip code did that paper get delivered to? Right? So if we pull, and again, if somebody is writing a press release in this town and they're writing another one in this town, but it's for the same project, well, can we learn from the best practices? Should we pull all these things together? So that was my first idea. Like, let's just do like this huge organizational behemoth, right? And see if we can find the patterns. I didn't even know that lesson was going to be carried over until my life later, but the patterns are the most important thing, because there's always patterns, and there's always patterns within patterns, and they teach you either what to double down on or what to fix, right?
Right.
So that's what we were doing. And here's the patterns I noticed. Number one, people hate writing. People at the largest company in the world and the smallest nonprofits in the world. Writing is very challenging, and it's a bit of the fear of the blank page is overwhelming for so many people.
For sure.
Right. The second thing was, once you have content, so if creating content is hard, but once you do have it, people tend to waste it. They spend a lot of time on it, and then they really don't do anything with it. There's this strange understanding that if you build it, they will come, which is not true at all. If you write it, no one will read it. You have to tell people about that you've written it, or you've produced it or whatever. And you have to do it multiple times. I knew from radio, we used to play you the same song 300 times a week, hoping you would hear it at once. Right? I knew that.
Same thing with commercials too.
Yes, right.
I mean, the ads,
that's right.
The songs, but also the ads. I mean, you hear it over and over until you go, oh, it's everywhere, but you have to have that repetition. Absolutely.
Yes. And it used to be, to your point, it used to be 7 times that you had to hear an ad for it to sink in. And now it's 12 to 14.
Oh, wow.
Think about that.
It's definitely a competition on your attention.
Yeah, there's so much noise, right? And so how do you cut through the noise? That's the thing that we're all trying to figure out. And so the other component was one I touched on before, was this replication of efforts that seemed redundant to me, right? If everybody's working on a project, we don't all need to write the same press release or the same blog. Let's write one, but then you can't just copy and paste it, because when you're talking to individuals or individual audiences or locations, there's a vernacular there that you have to allow for. So you have to take the original and understand how to mold it into the voice for that group, right?
Right.
Or teach people how to do that. So this system, and I did that, and we did it by hand. This system is what became Lately. So I thought, okay, first of all,
so let me just understand this. So I'm following. So you basically had this idea of there is content. People don't like to write content, but then when they actually write it, they don't use it correctly because it's a wasted content. Basically, you can write like a whole article, but if that article is not being repurposed or not being reused for different aspects of it, it's kind of like you basically spend a lot of time, or you hired somebody and spend money, so a lot of time and money on writing content that then it's not being 100% utilized, right?
Yes, exactly right. Because what do people do typically? They take the title of the blog in this case, and they publish the title. Check out my blog is what they say. Now, oftentimes the title, while doing its job of summarizing an article, is not doing its job of making anybody click to read more. It's not very interesting. There's not a movie trailer kind of aspect to it, which is what you want. This is the marketing part. This is the spin. And so I thought, well, the title Walmart helps the poor with tax credits it's boring, let's be honest. But inside what we wrote was really interesting. $2,000 actually is life-changing for 54 million Americans. That's a huge amount of people, right? And it's only $2,000. That's not very much money. Why is that? So I thought about, what if we just lifted out different quotes and put a link on the end? And because I often wrote the blog, I mean, the writing was already good, right? I knew that. And
course.
well, of course. And if I had a typical blog and I could pull out 40 quotes and 40 links back, and then what if I scheduled them? Because we knew quantity has to happen here. We just talked about that. What if I drip fed them out over time though? So now I'm changing my mindset of marketing. I'm now saying, I know I can see the power of the link back, and I knew the long tail. I knew the value of that from radio. Okay. And I can see that if you drip feed something out over time, by which I mean, let's say twice a week, we take these 40 social posts and publish them for 20 weeks. Okay. That's out over time. And let them percolate as marketing does. So let it sink in. You're going to get the quantity. You're going to get a teaser here, and you're going to get the payback of the long tail, which becomes exponentially greater than in the moment, because butts in seats is very fruitless. Okay. You can spend a lot of money there, but if you think of eyeballs later, when you take the time factor away, everybody has time then, right?
No, it makes no sense. So basically what you're saying is that you wrote this blog, and then you identify quotes that will actually attract probably also different public, different population, right? Because that might resonate with, women. That might resonate with men. That might resonate with a certain type of socioeconomic level, right? So, but all of those quotes, will lead to the same blog, right? To the same article, and that you are achieving the way of actually having those impressions of that people actually reading this blog, but they come from different interest points according to what communicates to them. And it doesn't have to be just right now. Let's say when I publish a blog on LinkedIn, you will see it will disappear, right? And maybe you don't have the time to read it right there, but that way you have it over time. So at some point in time, using the word time a lot, but at some point in time, that person will be able to actually have the time to read it because they're interested enough, right?
That's right. So I should have said this, but the short way is evergreen content, right? So if you think of everything as evergreen content, it is, because it's always searchable now. Everything on the web is forever, right?
Right.
So let's bank on that longer tail like that. It's going to take us a while to amass this, but we're going to bet on it and be patient. That's the hard part, So that's what we did. And I was able to then take those social posts and then teach the group, the 20,000 marketers, how to localize them for their specific voices, their audience, wherever they were. And the idea was then to get Lately to do the same thing. Now, to be clear, Adi, we didn't know this is what we were doing then. I explained it to you, but I didn't have quite all those words at the time. And we certainly didn't know it was artificial intelligence, right? We thought we had built an organization system.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You created a process, basically. We're all about processes. You actually created a process on how to, what would you call that process? How to increase engagement, or how to get people to read the blogs. It's just basically a process of how to get people engaged, the different audiences engaged, right?
Yeah, I mean, now we say repurpose, which you had said, and that's super accurate, but there's more to it, because it's not just repurpose, it's repurpose with quite a purpose. Right.
Yeah. Maybe we need to define it, Kate, because I did throw that word out because you use it a lot. I mean, not you, but it's being used a lot, right? So what does repurpose mean to you?
Thanks for asking. Nobody ever asks that. It's funny because repurpose, it's not reuse is the throwaway. I feel right? Repurpose, I imagine this spark of confetti opening that blows stars into the sky or something, because it's this exponential atomizer and it's not only the multiple pieces, but it's the effect that they have, right? So my Uber power is turning listeners into fans,
Right.
customers into evangelists. And I believe that that's what I mean when I say repurpose, is how do I, yes, make better use of this thing, but with the end game of not only making the sale, but making a marketer for me in my business.
Right. So that's,
Right?
I guess, the purpose, because you're taking it and you make like re-meaning again, right? So you take the purpose and then you make the purpose again, but now to that particular audience and that particular audience, or that timing for that. Maybe it's the same audience, it wasn't the right timing, right? But you're taking what you
Right.
already created, that content, instead of creating new content, now you're taking it in for a different purpose. And then you make, I love that, like you make your customers into evangelists, or listeners
Yeah.
and fans, right? I mean, I like that connection. I like the connection you are mentioning, like how you're basically creating that emotional connection, and you have to make sure that you're using the right purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could rename it, by the way. If you're in the middle of the night, you think of a good name, let me know, because, part of my challenge, which is embarrassing as a marketer, is describing like the three things we talked about really here, which is the actual act of reusing something, reusing it with this enhanced purpose, let's call it, of listeners to fans or customers to evangelists. And then the third piece is that mindset shift we said, right? So utilizing the long tail, getting out of this, marketing has this now history, which is antiquated because nothing we do really is now anymore. Everything gets recorded and you watch it at will.
Correct.
Right.
Like this particular podcast, for instance, is an example, right? So absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the story. I mean, to how it all evolved. So you figured out that, you didn't know what you were doing, but you just described what you were doing. Now, hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
So then how did you, like, what sparked you, or how did you convert that to artificial intelligence? I mean, did you just sit down and say, oh, wow, I can actually have AI do that for me, or utilize AI? Like, what's the now taking it to the next level?
Yeah. So being the marketer, I'm always looking for like the right spin, so we built Lately, which was essentially inside my spreadsheet for Walmart, there were multiple worksheets. And so each feature of our Lately platform was one of those worksheets, right? So it was a similar idea. And what we saw was the customers were very, very attracted to this one particular feature. And it was the one where you paste in the link to a blog, you push a button, and Lately pulled out all the sentences with a short link, just like I had done by hand. And so we started to be like, oh, okay, this is kind of an interesting thing. Maybe we should rearrange how we sell the product. So we started doing a demo with that piece first. We're still thinking we're selling organization. We don't know this has changed yet, but we're trying to put this forward, and we still don't know how to talk about it. Like we there is no AI, there is no repurposing, like these words aren't there. But more and more, and we're getting distracted as companies do, right? Because now we've created content that's interesting. People want to publish it, and they're expecting publishing to be like the other publishing. They know Hootsuite, for example. Like, I don't know if Buffer was around then, but they have an understanding of what it should be. So now we're competing against the behemoth that we don't want to be competing against, but because once you have cool content, you want to publish it, right? So we're going down a bit of a spiral, and then AI starts to become prevalent in the market. And I'm reading about it, and I was like, oh my God, this is actually what we're doing. So we learn to relabel it. We learn more and more that writing is such a problem. And we eventually actually pull out all the publishing pieces from the product altogether. We just did this as an experiment this year to see if we could sell nothing but the AI.
You don't, like, you mean like pull the publishing, so you don't write for people anymore. They write their own.
No, we still do the mini publishing on social media.
Oh, I
see. Yeah. So you still give us your long form content, we still atomize it, and then you can take it and go publish it somewhere else where you already have an account with Buffer or Sprout Social or HubSpot's social media hub or Hootsuite, for example. because this is a pain in our ass, to be frank. Like,
okay, so somebody else published, but you do that. So
yeah.
So we got the path, which is extremely interesting. Now I want to focus, just so also for my understanding, the understanding of the listeners is like, tell me about the offering. First of all, tell me who are your clients? Who is your ideal client?
Yeah. And by the way, we do publish now again. We stopped for a while.
So
we do it again.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, yeah, because I was already thinking, oh my gosh, now we have to do it ourselves. Okay, good. So now that's good to know.
That's good to know. Yeah. And it's and so, well, it's the point of that story, just to wrap it up, is the willingness to go with the flow, right?
Right.
This is where the demand is going, and we're able to pivot enough, not pivot, but I would say evolve, because we're still the same product. We'll just be able to respin it or remarket it or refocus the conversation. So our customers are everyone, which no investor wants to hear, but it's been the case all the time. We've learned not to compartmentalize them by industry, really, or size, but by need. So need to fear the blank page is a terrible thing. So people who suffer from that, that's number one, because guess what? It's Walmart, it's Gary Vaynerchuk's team. Like, I mean, we've talked to some of the most famous companies in the world that have the same problems as little tiny startup, right? The other problem is how do we unlock the content we've created? If we have a podcast or a webinar, because we do this with, well, we talked about text, but we do that with audio and video as well, where we even clip up the video quotes of what you say and turn them into basically social posts with memes, right? How can we serve those people who've worked so hard in this content and help them atomize it or get the most out of it? We also created a syndication component because this need for the question of what to say online has become an epidemic of sorts, because it's not just the brand now, it's the people, because there's a weight on your shoulders individually to market yourself and not rely on the company to do it. Salespeople, they have to go drum up the business themselves. So social selling, employee advocacy, we built these features into Lately so we can help with these problems. So our customers range from small, medium, and large companies who are interested in those components and saving time. I mean, just for the people listening, and not to be a commercial, but Lately saves an average of 84% of your time writing. That's
amazing. That's amazing, amazing. So give me an example. Let's take a small to medium sized business. It's just like whatever industry you want to choose. Let's talk about. Give me an example of one of your clients that is about, I don't know, like has about 20 to 50 employees, an industry.
Yeah. So with those customers, for example, they're often using Lately in two ways. One, to market the brand. So the brand produces regular blogs or podcasts or videos, but also they receive earned media very often. So interviews with the CEO or press releases. So a combination of owned and earned media. And then they're also utilizing found media. So that's thought leadership articles about their industry. This is all stuff we want to talk about online and social. And like, how do we talk about it? Oh, there's this great article, about Apple computers, and we want to write about them, but how do we do it? So you're able to take any of that kind of content and run it through Lately. So usually it's the digital marketing manager who does this, sometimes supervised by perhaps a CMO or someone in the middle there. And that person will auto-generate from any of these kinds of content. She or he will, maybe if Lately is giving you 40 posts, maybe she'll take 20 of the best ones, schedule them out over time, and create really a patchwork quilt with her calendar. Now she can do this for the brand itself, but she's usually also doing it for some employee mix. It could be the executives, the C-suite. It could be like a team of social sellers, for example. So there's just a combination of how they're using Lately. And so
what they're posting, just to understand, Kate, is the quotes that are generated, right? And it will be like part of, let's say we're recording this podcast, we run it through Lately, and then there will be like several posts that, things that I said or you said, that we talked about, and that will be the post for that social media with a link to this podcast.
Yeah. In this case, if it's video, it'll also include the video clip of the one-liner of you saying what's in the social media post itself, right?
So this
in
podcast can be used several times. You can use that 50 times in order to get it into this podcast, right?
Right. And we'll give you the transcript also. So a lot of our customers will then take the transcript and make a blog out of it because, I mean, why not? And then guess what you can do with the blog? Run it through Lately and get different social posts on the same topic and use those as well. So it becomes a cascade, you know?
That's amazing. So it's basically, if I understand this correctly, you can use one blog post, and that's what we talked at the beginning about. It's basically, instead of needing to write over and over again, you can take one blog post and basically advertise it, or basically post it on social media, let's say 20 times, it will still lead to the same blog post, right?
That's right. And what's great is it's not perceived as spammy because every different quote that we pull out is different, obviously, right?
Yeah.
And also, so the new upgrade to Lately a couple of weeks ago is it'll give you all those quotes, but then if it comes across any that seem a little weird, it will also rewrite them for you. And it'll do it in your voice. That's very specific. So it's constantly learning you specifically. It's not just doing what it thinks is like the best overall. It's like, well, how would Adi say this herself, right? So for example, Lately surfaces word clouds for you in its analytics that shows you literally the words that are trending with your target audience and the ideas, right? And it'll ask you if you want the AI to find more content, you know, from what you give it throughout, you know, with these words in mind or less. You can train it. But it also does this with hashtags. So one of the things we learned, Adi, was that the old way of using hashtags as trending devices where you paste a slew of them hoping to gain on someone else's fame really is considered not only spammy, but can push you down with the algorithms because it's lazy. It's not really conversational. It's like nobody reads that stuff, right? But instead, two things. If you think of hashtags as more of an enhancer of the message, so number one, by putting them in line, so you can, by meaning inside the message as opposed to the end, it'll give you that visual cue, like in a resume, you know, you're thinking how numbers and things look in a resume. And then the second thing is if you use hashtags as an enhancer, some way to maximize the text or optimize the text that's there. For example, my highest performing hashtag is hashtag peeing my pants, because that's what I said when Gary Vaynerchuk tweeted about us. Okay. So the reason that trends high is because it sounds like a human, right?
That's right.
And that's what people respond to. They respond to the interest, like the real.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They do, because you want, and that's one of probably the arts of getting, you know, doing it, using artificial intelligence in order to actually save you the 84% of your time, right? And I guess the time that is being saved is like figure out what hashtag, figure out what to say, posting, you know, publishing, you know, creating the content, but you still want to make sure that it's real and authentic and real, the real, right?
The real. And that's, by the way, what's so amazing to me, Adi, is that like people still don't want to do this one part. Like we've designed our AI to not do the whole thing for you, and it's on purpose. And the reason is if you pull the human out of the equation, you don't get the magic, right? It just doesn't happen. I mean, this is why we're humans, right? And so we know that an AI on its own is cold. It's just a hunk of metal. Right. Whereas a human is slow, you know, but together the AI can automate the hard things and the human adds the magic. Right. And when you put them together, you see 12,000% increased engagement. That's what we got Gary and his team. Okay. That's no joke. Yeah.
Amazing. So what is the part that the human still does? What's that part that you leave for the humans?
Yeah. So there's two roles, very important. Everything the AI spits out, a human needs to look it over and edit it, right? The AI will do weird things. You know, it doesn't know it. It just met you. You have to help it out, right? It might start with a non sequitur or something. Now, it's going to make an attempt to rewrite that, but maybe it'll say she instead of her. For example, human speech patterns are not always the same, right? That this is why. It's not like you're just studying grammar or something like that. And it does begin to using yours, learn yours specifically, but it takes a little time. So that's one way. Everything you edit, it's taking note. If you trash a post, if you publish it, it's going to be like, oh, do more of that. This is good. This is bad. And then inside those word clouds I told you about, that's the other place, right? So if lately says, well, it looks like the word good is in a lot of your posts that do really well. Now you, the human, would probably say, okay, lately, don't double down on that word, right? Unless you're good humor ice cream products, then yes, a good thing.
Good. That makes
right? But,
a lot of sense. Yeah. Wow. So Kate, tell me, in terms of building, you have the experience now of building the companies. I mean, you had the first company and then you had a consultancy and then you figure out, okay, this is what people need and this is how I'm going to basically package it. It's very similar. I can totally relate, very similar to my story. When I started my consulting company in 2011, it was basically everything, like the things that I'm good at, and it's helping people and it's helping in different areas. And I found myself, hey, what entrepreneurs are really having problem with is documenting their processes and procedures, creating those training manuals, creating those playbooks. It's on their to-do list, but it's never a priority. And I realized that that's what they need. That's why I can really relate to your story, because you saw the need, and then you figured out a solution on how to solve it, right? So if we go to talk about systems, right, and processes, why, from your perspective as an entrepreneur and working with so many companies, small, medium, and big, what is your take of why processes and procedures are so important for a company?
Yeah, you hit on it. I mean, we are constantly building the plane as we fly it. Like you said, the systems and procedures can often be a last minute thought. And it's too late. We're already deep into it. Marketing was never that, because of course I came from this world. So we started, way in the beginning, because I know in order for the long tail to work, because I'm betting on the later, you have to start it now. And that's really unique. Almost every startup has this problem of marketing is like a huge problem, right? They don't know how to get lead gen going, right? We have a 98% sales conversion, by the way, lately, and we only use lately for, I just want to answer your question, but then spell this out to everybody. So I do this podcast. I'm going to ask you for the file. I don't care if you have 2 listeners or 20 million listeners, because this is lead gen for me. The content is itself. Right. We're going to run it through our own AI. Leighton's going to clip up the one-liners that you or I said. It's going to drive traffic back to your website. So this is a win for you with all 40 posts or 50 posts, whatever we use. And then we know that the quotes it pulls out are the exact quotes for my audience that they're most likely to respond to, right? And then we have a conversation with them on social. They're warm already. This is the key to the high conversion. So by the time we get to them, they're essentially hot. But with getting the systems and planning in place, believe it or not, like I am the most anal retentive in the world. Everything in my house is white. All my closets are beautiful. Every cabinet, when you open the doors, it's awesome. Like my car is the one shit show, frankly. Whereas the company, it has to be messy, because there's so many changes that happen so often. So and this is not always the case, but a lot of the times, for example, a help center, like we can make videos all day for our help center, but we've changed the product, 90 times in the last 3 months. Lauren would have to be making 10 videos a day, right? So they're outdated. I mean, just is what it is. However, what I found, like, even though I'm a spreadsheet queen, the systems that I love the most in the world, Adi, are the ones that are born out of language. Okay. So I'll give you an example. I love our Slack channel. I built a place. It's a place, even though it's virtual, where we communicate like a pack of wolves. Like there's a lot of things that go unsaid, but there are rules that we have to, when a new person comes into our lives, it fucks up our communications pretty hard, always, every single time, right? Because they're trying to figure out all these unspoken things. And we've had to learn to figure out ways to document them and educate people around them. And some of that includes like etiquette. Some of it includes vernacular. We have words that we've made up, right? Just like you have with your family or friends that mean something to all of us. The inside jokes, all the shorthand you have there. I'm in love with that. I think it's what makes any community a beautiful, unique place, because you feel this inclusivity, around it. What we've tried to do is take that feeling and translate it to our customers. So the inside systems that we have around language, we purposefully use it outside, and we do it in a way so that you might not know what you were talking about, but you want to, right?
That makes total sense.
Yeah. And the AI is like that, by the way, as well, because this idea of clipping out a quote that you don't totally know what the interview is about yet, it's designed to give you just enough sex appeal so you want to hear more. See, it's everywhere, this idea, this system for us.
Yeah, totally. And it's so, I totally agree. And I've done it many times for many clients in terms of documenting their communication system. Okay, so they use Slack or Teams, or like, when do you use Slack and how do you use the different channels? What is the etiquette? Yeah. What are the rules? Right. And so I totally relate to that. And I think it's an awesome way of explaining why systems are important. So you can actually have that consistency, but also that feeling of belonging to people from the outside that are coming in, and also reminding the group members on what are the rules and how do we do that? And then the creativity can actually happen in between those rules. So I love that, Kate.
Thank you. Yeah, I know we have to go, and I just wanted to say, like, it's interesting that, of course I've worked places where there's a lot of handbooks and there's a lot of the fucking handbooks, right? Like where there's all those things which do need to be in place when you're in a bigger company. But as you were talking about this, it's interesting to me that the rules that matter most to us are the unspoken rules. Like we talk about the golden rule all the time, do unto others. And we mean it in the nice, heavenly kind of way, but we also mean it in the, like if you're going to, don't dump the pile of work on someone else. Like get them 3/4 of the way there and then give them the rest of it. Right. So it's a different way. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. That's where I find that defining those things, that's the culture. That's really what makes the company what it is, right? Yeah. It's not some kind of a dry handbook that sits on the shelf. Like whenever we document or create a handbook, it's always within the culture of that particular organization for that exact reason. So I'm really happy that you mentioned that, because it has to fit who you are, right? It has to fit the way you talk. It has to fit the culture, and it has, what purpose are you trying to accomplish? Like, why are you documenting, right? So each person has to answer the own answer to that of like, why documenting? And then if the answer is just because we have to, then you're not ready to do that, right?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Like the culture is such a huge part of it, and I find that the people who do a poor job of what you do don't take that into consideration, because it's everything, right? Otherwise, it's just a dry cookie cutter thing, and nobody wants that, right?
Correct. That's correct.
And it's inhuman then, because it's not malleable. I mean, which everything has to be. Everything changes. Everything always morphs. So it has to. All systems, I believe, have to have that built-in ability to go with the flow. Right?
Absolutely. Okay, so in closing, first of all, we have to direct our listeners to lately.ai, right? That's the website.
Thank you.
Absolutely, because it's nice. This has been such an amazing interview because you walk us through your own story, which was totally inspirational. And I hope our listeners got inspired by, they can do it, right? And they don't have to be ashamed that they can be entrepreneurs and be who they are, but also really understanding how you can use AI and the systems that you can build in order to actually increase the ability to be out there and communicate in a large sphere. I mean, that is for me, like, it's been such an incredible interview getting that data. So Kate, thank you a lot. And also I want to thank Russell Benaroya that he interviewed you first. And that's how I found out about you. I listened to the interview and I go, okay, I have to interview Kate. I have so many more questions that I want to ask.
Awesome.
So definitely. I'm going to also include the link to that podcast that Russell did with you, because I think it's great to listen to both of you talk. And then our listener, if they want to hear more from Kate and definitely from Russell. So again, thank you so much, Kate, for being a guest on this podcast.
You are awesome, Adi. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.